Welcome back. Today we've got some pretty damn incredible lore to talk about. This is stuff that we first found out in the Burning Crusade that is now finally becoming relevant, and it's about Koresh, which is the homeworld of the Ethereals. So, Koresh was attacked by Dimensius, and Dimensius is the Void Lord who is currently gunning for Azeroth. Not to destroy it, but to consume it. And what's fascinating with Koresh is it's not destroyed. It's still out there waiting for us to show up. And what's bigger is that a new detail of what happened before it fell has emerged via the War Within. Koresh and Azeroth are doing the same thing. And our job is to not end up like the Ethereals. So you might be wondering where this comes from, and the good news I've got for you is this is no major plot spoiler of something that happens during a new War Within zone. Basically, it's a tidbit we get from Jaina near the start of the expansion that sets up something absolutely massive if you know the lore. So, this comes right at Jaina. At the very beginning of the War Within, she has a chat, and when you talk with her, she says this: Locust Walker told us that the people of his homeworld once received a vision, not unlike the Radiant Song, and then Koresh fell to shadow. By the time the Ethereals realized their world was warning them of the coming danger, it was already too late. We cannot allow the same thing to happen on Azeroth. And for a deeply immersive story, Jaina also allegedly said to check out today's sponsor. Our friends over at boot.dev, who are going to teach you back-end web development, which is an amazing skill. They use Python and Go, and they do it the smart way. I think because one of their co-founders is a viewer of the channel and a big Warcraft guy. They're an online self-paced platform 100% designed to get you writing code, and not just any code, because they are working you through role-playing game-inspired problems. You can see the founder's passion in it, and that's good because it's a similar passion to what we have. The site itself has got quests, levels, XP, achievements, that sort of thing, and you can get 25% off your first purchase with my link and code, which is down below. Now, they are actually pros themselves, and that's why their approach is pragmatic and wise. It is designed to teach you the fundamentals that you will need right through to the sorts of things that you would actually be doing on the job. And they're always adding new content, like their recent course on shells and terminals. It's all themed as you basically being a cyber forensic investigator poking around the file system of a big megacorp, which is totally Mr. Robot vibes, which is awesome and fun and engaging, unlike my university experience. I wish Boot existed back then. Of course, the good news is they're here now. You can check them out today at boot.dev/Bellular, and you can use code Bellular for 25% off your first purchase. And they put their money where their mouth is there, like no questions asked, 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can actually check out free demos of all of their courses on the site. So they do it consumer-friendly too. Cheers, Boot, let's roll. Whenever I heard that line from Jaina, all the neurons just started firing off in my brain, and that's because this is lore that I know and understand, and I've been waiting for Koresh to actually appear for years. But if you don't know that story, you might be kind of confused. So today, strap in, we're going to learn a pretty damn awesome tale. Koresh was an arid planet, yet life thrived and races developed despite it being baked by 2 stars. And again, if we go there, just imagine the visual of 2 stars in the sky. It would be pretty awesome. Just like Azeroth, Koresh had a world soul, and just like our planet, many sentient races. But one ruled supreme, and that race is the one that we now call the Ethereals. Their civilization had existed for thousands of years. They became masters of arcane technology. Their rulers were known as Nexus Kings, who, like Malygos and Caldara, ruled over vast arcane power, likely all connected via the ley lines of their world. And the society was shaped around the princes of the Ethereum and their many different cartels. And compared to us, their knowledge was massive. They understood the cosmos, they understood their planet's power, but unlike us, when their world soul started to stir, they didn't listen. Of course, with us, Azeroth has appeared in many folktales. As an example, the Earth Mother of Tauren myth. But most directly in the story, Magni Bronzebeard has been involved. From his transformation into his current stony form in the Cataclysm, through to now and into the War Within, he has been leading the charge. But now something has changed. Azeroth is singing a radiant song, giving characters like Jaina, Thrall, and Anduin visions. It's a song that doesn't reach Magni, visions that he does not see. So something has changed, and now with Jaina's revelation, it is clear that we need to take a look at Koresh, we need to think about Dimensius, and talk about the story of how that planet fell, and how the Ethereals actually look the way they do now. Dimensius first. He is the only named Void Lord, and of them he seems to be the most active. He is Xal'atath's personal patron, and actually gave her the staff Void Song, which we recently discovered, but that happened long ago during the days of the Black Empire when Azeroth was all old gods. Now this is all part of a plan that would have her become his harbinger, the person who would set into motion events that will bring him to Azeroth and spell our doom. Oddly, we actually defeated Dimensius during the Burning Crusade, but back then he was a mere dungeon boss, and that's because he had only manifested in at a fraction of his actual world-ending power. Next, I'm going to give you a glimpse of what a slightly larger fraction of his power looks like. And I say slightly large because if he gets access to Azeroth, canonically, his power will be far greater than anything the Ethereals dealt with. How Dimensius found the world of Koresh is a question that still fractures ethereal society. We can imagine there was a harbinger on that world, perhaps even a plan that extended longer into history than the Ethereals could have imagined. But before Dimensius came, Koresh sent a radiant song to its people, begging them to listen. And that the Ethereals ignored this is rather telling in itself. I mean, how deeply did the Void sink its tendrils in before devouring its prey? How many Ethereals worked towards their own doom? We don't know, but it's all stuff that could make for incredible storytelling, perhaps in a future patch zone. Regardless though, Dimensius did manifest, and here is that tale. Over the Ethereals' once great magical cities, countless portals to the Void opened. To the Void and the twisting Nether, and this bathed the planet in void and arcane energy. It turned the already dry planet into a blasted wasteland. Nexus King Salhadar gathered the best mages of the Ethereum and the cartels to power magical barriers, and this was partially successful. They stopped the Void in its tracks, but it did little for the arcane energy that now bathed the world, and thus the price was high. They survived the Void, but they became beings of pure arcane light. Their physical forms literally swept away. This ultimately then was the least bad option they felt they had, but existing as an energy being did have its perks, and through that they became incredibly powerful practitioners of arcane magic, and so wielding this magic, they were able to stop Dimensius' advance for now. But even as they did this, their own bodies began to dissipate into the Void. Their remaining arcane form began to wither. Turns out that being an uncontained energy being is not a survivable state in the long term, and that gave rise to a solution, one that defines how they look today. Magical cloth wrappings enchanted to preserve their forms. And with these wrappings, with this solution, they could last, and last they did. War ruled Koresh for decades, as the Ethereals held back their Void aggressors, who were led by Pandemonius the Nation Eater. Through all of this, the Ethereals fought, and they held out for years, and as those years passed, their situation only grew more dire. Yes, you could say that a successful defense is a victory, but without a realistic way to strike back and to fundamentally change their situation, it began to look like a doomed cause. And even in that situation, Dimensius was only beginning to manifest. It took unthinkable quantities of energy and will, but with each devoured ethereal soul, he slowly grew. The situation became more and more desperate. With each lost battle, the Nexus King Shalhadar's mind would turn darker. Away from any bright, happy futures and towards a single-minded drive for revenge that would come to consume his mind. And by that point, the reality of their situation could not be denied. It truly was a losing battle. If they tried to hold their world, they would be utterly destroyed. So with no hope for a successful defense, all they could do was flee into the dark. And flee they did. and rather than unify them, this escape would hasten their divides. Salhadar vowed vengeance and launched a crusade against Dimensius, revenge no matter what the cost. And whilst Salhadar went progressively mad, the once ruling elite of Koresh, the Ethereum, splintered. Salhadar's madness had infected the minds of the Ethereum's core, and they believed that the Void could be used as a weapon against itself. They could fight fire with fire. Some, though, took a more radical path and formed the Shadow Guard, completely giving themselves to the Void. Then there is the Protectorate, who attempt to maintain what little remains of their once glorious civilization on Koresh. Beyond that, though, there are other independent groups, like Schaffer's Ethereals, who hunted Pandemonius and bound him, so that Dimensius' greatest general could then be used to fight against the Void. And between the Ethereum and many different other groups, we have met loads of these Ethereals on our adventures, of course mostly during the Burning Crusade. I mean, just think about the first time you went to Netherstorm and saw the massive biodomes. It's a pretty incredible thing. Going back to the story, Salhadar's crusade went on for 1,000 years until he wound up on another blasted planet, so twisted with rage and revenge that he was essentially unrecognizable as anything other than an agent of the Void. But even then, even as he gave in to those powers, he still harbored only a desire to defeat Dimensius. And while you could say the perseverance is laudable, ultimately that is the state that he ended up in. To kill Dimensius, he essentially fell to Dimensius, and thus was the end of the last great Nexus King of Koresh, and with his death, a power vacuum appeared. Now, are the Ethereals, as we see them today, just a lost, broken race? Is it only a matter of time before they all fall to the Void Lords? Or did some of them in fact try to reclaim Koresh? So now that we know about the fall of their world and their exodus, which then led to us meeting them in the Burning Crusade, let's talk about what's going on in the present day and just what could be there at Koresh. Throughout most of World of Warcraft, the Ethereals have been cast as traders and collectors, but just as often they're causing trouble. They're breaking tombs, they're consuming void creatures, and then, around the Fourth War, strange things started to happen. They began snooping on us. In the Trial of Style, and in the Brawlers Guild, you could see that the Void Ethereal Shadreen and her agents were essentially trying to learn how we dressed and fought, and we have a whole lore video on that from about 2 years ago, maybe 3. Anyway, then the Void Scrawled Coin appeared in our adventure journal just at the start of Dragonflight, and in a way that is a little bit of metatextual fun from Blizzard, but it is also them directly pointing out to us that Shadreen has been watching our every move, that one of her agents put that shadow-scrolled coin in your adventure log. And with Blizzard doing that, we need to properly examine the Ethereals, because it's basically just Blizz saying, hey, this is a hint. All that stuff's relevant. So in our past investigation of Shadreen and the Ethereal conspiracy, the one thing that became very clear is that she says she is working for an as-yet unnamed master. Who knows? There seems to be an Ethereal pulling all of the strings. Shadreen has got very mysterious motivations. She doesn't really say why she's doing what she does, but if you consider that Koresh still exists, that the Ethereals may, in part, have returned there, it does become a bit more clear. I mean, all the way back in the Burning Crusade, an Ethereal known as the Collector, when summoned to Netherstorm, shouted in frustration, quote, "You've called me down from Koresh to deal with this band of misfits." So if he said that, if he came from Koresh, then it always has been canon that at least some Ethereals operate from the ruins of their old homeworld. Honestly, even though that line existed, the Ethereals were just so mysterious that, as a community, we all just kind of assumed that Koresh was gone. But clearly someone has stepped into the power vacuum left by Salhadar. Who knows, maybe that's the person who commands Shadreen. Maybe the bulk of the Ethereum are back on Koresh somehow. We don't know, we haven't visited. The question now is, are they a threat like Salhadar? Are they mad like the Ethereum? Or worse, are they like the Shadow Guard? Have they fallen truly to Void? Well, all we know is this. Blizzard are working on something. The shadow-scrawled coin tells us that. And with that said, we've got to talk about where all of this is going, and again, to talk about a little bit of data mined models, you can see that there is an Ethereal Nexus Princess in our next raid. There are little Ethereal hints absolutely everywhere. So, yeah, we gotta work out what this Void playbook is. Because I'm sure you'll remember that back on Argus during Legion, we saw this vast fleet of Void Ethereals. But we obviously didn't kill all of them. There is more out there. So let's talk about the Void playbook and what happens next. By now, we've taken a look at the fall of a world and a civilization. We know firsthand with Azeroth that Xal'atath is the Harbinger, that after Illyria absorbed the essence from the void-turned-narrow Lura, Xal'atath said that the caterpillar had become the butterfly, she is all but the voids now. That is obviously pointing to something big happening with Illyria, who of course is one of the main characters in the War Within. Something similar will have happened on Koresh, an interplay of characters wrapped up in the Void schemes. That Saladar's madness maybe even began long before Dimensius appeared and then only got worse, or maybe there's an entirely new context that could be brought to all of this when we finally learn more. And a great way to teach us more is Locust Walker, the mentor of Illyria. Of course, Xal'atath believes that Illyria will be key to her plan. That's why she talked about the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Then Locust Walker, the mentor of Illyria, well, he's doing just that. He is holding her hand as she walks down the void path. And Locust Walker is such a deeply mysterious character. He is promising control to Illyria, but it's clear that she's still playing with fire. So what role will Locust Walker play? Did he play a role in the death of his world? Is that what makes him a Void expert? Was he the old Harbinger? We don't exactly know, but with the Harbinger set up in Azeroth, it is basically just nuke time. The Void plan will be to open countless portals across the surface of the planet to bombard life on the surface with Void, with Arcane from the Nether, and depending on the magnitude of that, I mean, maybe the mages of Azeroth could handle it, but it would weaken us greatly. And of course, given the Midnight expansion happening Quel'Thalas and almost certainly being centered around the Sunwell, chances are something could go down with the Sunwell, and that energy could be used to essentially kick the whole thing off. And I think when that whole thing kicks off, when maybe the Sunwell gets used or gets corrupted, that is when Dimensius himself appears. And from that point, who knows, maybe we're doomed, maybe all we can do is run. But we do still have some questions, like what happened on Koresh? What happened to Koresh? Is Koresh, the world soul, a character that we could meet? Is there someone like Magni who's a speaker for that character? Is claiming Koresh and its energy how Dimensius could gain the power he would need to eventually fight us? Could we stop or hinder his invasion by taking the fight to Koresh and stopping him there? Could that be a massive patch zone like Argus was? I mean, it seems very plausible given all of the ethereal hints. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on with the Ethereals, but we know that something is going on. There are very much hints that Koresh is not a totally dead world. It all fits where the story is going, and let's be real, Argus was really cool. That was a hell of a patch. I've always loved the Ethereals in World of Warcraft. The prospect of going to their world, man, I think that would make for an absolutely peak patch experience. And that's not the only lore that's cooking right now. If you'd next like to learn about a surprise that we found that once again is extremely low spoiler for the War Within, well, check out this video next. I hope you've enjoyed today's. I love digging into new lore. I hope you love it too. And yeah, go check out the next video. It's on Life, Genosaurs, Agrimar, really cool things that come from Warlords of Draenor, from before Warlords of Draenor, but actually sort of go into the game right now. Whoa, it's a cool video. I loved writing it. So check it out. I'll see you there.